if we stick with this idea of control just a bit longer, it becomes apparent that this really helps to clarify things quite a lot. It's kind of like a key that once we understand it, all of the other stuff goes into perspective and starts to make more sense. So all we need to do is to understand um, this idea of control. And even saying that sounds somewhat absurd, because control is such a basic thing, and we all think we know everything there is to know about control. In one way we do, in the sense that we know that it feels good to control. We know that in everyday life it's not good if things are totally out of control, and that when things are back in control it's better. So we know about control on that level, but we don't really have that much insight into what control is really all about on a psychological level. So we could say that there's, just to make things more understandable, there's two worlds. There's not just the one world, there's two worlds. So there's a conditioned world, the world in which there are rules which determine how things hang together and how things go. And in the conditioned world, control is king. So it's as simple as that. In the conditioned world, control is irreproachable. It's everything. If you have perfect control or good control, you've got it made. If you don't, you're in loser city. You're not going to get anything. Nothing's going to work out for you because you can't control. Actually, the ability that we have to control determines our status, how other people relate to us. Do they look down their noses at us, or do they think we're great? And in the conditioned world, it's that ability to exert control, which you could also call power, that we respond to, that we look up to, that we value. Powerful people we take notice of. Someone with no power, they're less than nothing. We wouldn't even register them, and if we did, it would only just be to curse them or tell them to get out of the way or something like that. Now, because the conditioned world is based on logical pathways, on rules, on things working out in a particular way that is the lawful way for them to work out, we can see that control kind of fits in with this, because control has to do with understanding what the rules are, being able to kind of align with them, understanding what makes the system work and aligning with that system, playing the game. So what we're really saying is that in game reality, the only thing that really counts is the ability to play the game, which is control. Like James Carr says in his book Finite and Infinite Play, or whatever it's called, something like that. In a finite game, see, if you and me are playing a finite game, what matters is that I get the outcome I want, instead of you being able to obtain the outcome you want, which is to my disadvantage. So it's competition. If I can't be tricked or maneuvered by you, but instead I'm able to trick or maneuver you, then I have the control. I have the power. And that's what it's all about. So that's straightforward. In the other realm, the unconditioned realm, which we could just say that's the way things actually are in themselves, the natural world. If we are prepared to kind of go along with that, this division of the conditioned world versus the unconditioned world, we could say that the unconditioned world it's not a simulation. It's not a rule-based affair at all. The principle is spontaneity. Things happen that are going to happen, and there's no causality in it, because in the conditioned world, A causes B, So we do A in order to get B to happen. If we can do that successfully, we're good at controlling. So controlling, again, makes sense in the causal realm, where everything is the result of something else, or the cause of something else again. In the causal realm, all there is causality. All there is this ripple of X causes Y, causes Z, causes etc. So obviously, causing the right outcome, not the wrong outcome, is where it's all at. But in the unconditioned world, it's this principle of spontaneity. Things arise. We don't know why they arise. We can't control it, so they do arise. So even if we want to, we can't. In fact, if we want to make things arise, they don't. Because our will, our personal will, our power doesn't count for anything in the unconditioned realm. So possibly this could sound like a fairy tale, and we could say, well, that's very nice, but there isn't any such thing as a conditioned realm, unconditioned realm. It's just some fairy story. Get real, or whatever else we want to say, to bring that person down to earth with a bit of a bump and stop them bullshitting about things that aren't real, because that's annoying. But actually, when we talk about the unconditioned world, it's not so hard to understand, because when we talk about the unconditioned world, we're talking about the psyche, the inner world, not the external world of objects, but the inside of us, which has no real objects in it and is altogether less tangible. So we know from everyday experience that the psyche is spontaneous and that we can't get things to happen what we want to happen. And that when we try and get things to happen by being a bit of a control freak, by being a bit clever, we just get caught up in a tangle, and it causes problems for us. We know that from everyday experience, even if we don't know that we know it. For example, happiness is the key one. People always say money can't buy happiness. True. And also there's nothing we can do. There's no logical sequence of behaviors that we can enact in order to reach the goal of happiness. There absolutely is no such sequence of behaviors. It doesn't exist. Okay, we go on and on about the 7 habits of happy people, or that kind of idea. We go on and on about that. But it's bullshit, because we can copy a happy person and see, oh, well, they do this. They get up at 7:30 every morning. Then they have a cold shower. Then they go for a run. Then whatever else they do, maybe they meditate, maybe they do yoga, maybe they do crossword puzzles or whatever. So we think, I'll do that. That's clever. But of course, that's not going to make us happy. That's just going to make us into an idiot. What kind of an idiot are we? Rather than looking inside ourselves, we're copying someone else. So that never ever works. As has been said, happiness, it comes of its own accord, and it goes of its own accord, and there's no controlling it. So it's easy to overlook this fact that the most important thing, really, in as much as we all say we want to be happy, is outside of our control and occurs spontaneously, as does love. No one can love too well, toward compassion, humour, creativity, empathy, all of these things that belong to the psyche. All of the really important things, all the stuff we can do on purpose, such as boil an egg or make tea, it's pragmatically important, but trivial. The real thing that counts in life are the real things that count in life are the things that we can't control. And we can bring that right back down to the experience of being here. So I'm sitting here and I'm kind of got this awareness that I'm here in the car, sitting here, and that's non-volitional. I didn't cause that. It's out of my control. So, in other words, I didn't cause this. I didn't cause myself to be sitting here having this experience. Admittedly, I came here and drove here and parked here, but that didn't create the experience. And neither did I create the overall experience of actually the fact that I'm in the world for whatever length of time, and there is the world, and there's all this stuff happening. That's outside of my control. So the biggest things are never within our control, and we wouldn't want them to be, because then it would be incumbent on us to say what happens next and what happens next, and that would be acting out of the poverty of what we know, what possibilities there are of things to do. So I might have so many possibilities. I would say, oh, I want to do this, I want to go here, I want to go to Disneyland, I want to go scuba diving, I want to do this. All the things I know I can control, I can enact if given the means. But that just limits me to what I know. So I'm always going around this little, what I really, really would like is to be surprised and not to be living in a stale rerun. I would like to be surprised. Probably, I'd say, in a nice way rather than a nasty way, but still, just thinking in broad terms, I'd like to be surprised. Can I do that on purpose? Well, I can try. I can try to surprise myself in purpose. But it's not really going to work, is it? Because if I've got a hand in it, I already know, and then I'm not going to be surprised, and it becomes awful. I'm actually running my own reality, deciding what happens and what that becomes a nightmare. So we can see not only when we're talking in psychological terms, is control not king. When we do try to use control, it creates a bad situation. It creates a lot of suffering and claustrophobia, and it creates a horrific situation. Too much control equals hell, a state of acute, unbearable suffering in the psychological realm. We don't see this. I don't think we see this. As far as I know, we don't see this. We don't see that control is a horrible, horrible thing. What does control mean anyway in psychological terms? It means that I only want to have stuff happen that I know about and have decided should happen in the first place. I want to be saying what happens. So I'm playing a finite game. I don't want to be surprised. The thing about playing a finite game is you must never be surprised. All surprises are bad. If your opponent does something you haven't thought of, that's kudos to him. That's him getting the advantage, not you. So the master finite player is never ever surprised. He's always in control. He's always making things, or she's always making things happen that suits them. Nothing's left to chance, in other words. So within the rules of finite play, that's what it means. That's what control means, and it's seen as a good thing. In psychological terms, if I'm doing that, if I'm never surprised, the only stuff that happens is stuff that I want to happen, that suits me to happen, then that situation is hell. I'm trying to think of a word, but really, you just have to say it's hell. If you could be in it and be aware of it, fully cognizant of what that means, you would know what hell is. So in that case, it's not that hell is other people, like Jean Paul says. Hell is ourselves. Hell is me trapped in myself and never able to get out, just going around in circles in this private pocket of made-up reality, which I'm recycling over and over again because I'm actually afraid of something happening that I haven't officially okayed in the first place. So, what that means is, of course, that I'm being governed by fear. Fear of the unknown we talk about, neophobia, absolute feelings of fear about anything that might be new, something that I haven't come across before or I'm not familiar with. And so as a result of neophobia, I control. That's what gives me my impetus to control, my motivation to control. So what that means is, in psychological terms, control is just how fear manifests. Fear is control. Control is fear. With the kind of a proviso we could put in there to say that when we do well and we're able to control very effectively, we don't know that we're afraid. So we don't know what we're afraid of because that never is allowed to happen. And we don't know that we're afraid either because controlling effectively makes us feel good. And that's all we care about. We never examine why am I feeling good. If I examined why am I feeling good, oh, it's because I'm successfully hiding from reality. That kind of spoils the buzz a bit. We don't go further. We don't philosophize. We're not going to question the euphoric glow. We're not going to question what it feels like to be a winner, to be on a winner buzz. Feels good. That's it. It just feels good. So control does exist in terms of a psychological aspect of ourselves, our inner life. It does exist in as much as we all control all the time to make sure that we only see what we want to see and hear what we want to hear. We have a particular, very oversimplified, very crude picture of the world, and we carry on believing it. Whether that's an official belief that we kind of say, yes, I believe, blah, 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 or even if you're not a kind of religious believer or anything like that, or you're not a follower of any philosophy or religious, political ideology or anything, we still are believers. What we believe in is just the stuff we believe. When we believe in this, that, whatever opinions or crap we have in our heads, that's our beliefs. And we keep on believing that over and over again. Because that's what a finite game is. So my finite game is to prove that I am right to be believing in whatever I believe in, that my opinions are correct. So if you look at the energy that's in us all, that we get hurt if someone disrespects what we believe in, and if we're pissed off, we'll disrespect what someone else believes in, and it's all a finite game. So one ramification of that finite game is I could get everyone else to believe what I believe in, which people do. Sometimes people can do that. You could be an influencer, you could be a guru, you could be a political leader, you could be a tyrant, you could be a despot, you could be an advertising executive who's good at selling ideas. So all these are examples of how we do control. But the better we are at controlling, the more isolated and alienated from reality we are, because that's what control means. It means putting a distance, insulation between myself and reality, myself and life as it actually is. So on the one hand, the better I am at controlling, the more of a feel-good factor comes because I'm more successfully insulating myself from reality. So that feels good. So makes sense. Get better at controlling, you'll feel better. But on the downside, when we're doing that, the good feeling that we get doesn't represent any improvement objectively in my situation. It doesn't mean that anything good is happening. It just means that I am deluding myself, that I have my head stuck in the sand. So what that means is the better at controlling I am, the more suffering that I'm creating for myself, the more I'm engineering an extraordinarily painful and horrible situation for myself. So in that sense, we can say that if we want to talk about mental health, if we want to talk about controlling, we can say controlling is not a way towards mental health. It's a way of making it seem like I understand the world and I'm in control of the world, and it's a way of creating ontological security. But if I'm invested in creating ontological security, that doesn't mean I'm interested in mental health. It doesn't mean I'm pointing in the direction of psychological growth or growing as a person. It means that I'm hiding. So that's kind of pertinent when we consider the fact that our usual approach to therapy is to see it in terms of increasing control, being in more control of what's going on in our head so the bad stuff doesn't have to happen. That's how we see it. It's not always how we saw it. I think going back 100 years, when psychology was just appearing as a discipline, and when psychotherapy was just starting to branch off into various different forms, it wasn't like that. But due to the power of culture to determine what we see as being true and not true, we've narrowed down so very much that it is now pretty much all about control. Which means, as Krishnamurti has said and is often quoted in quotes from various people, that our society isn't a healthy society. It's not about supporting people in establishing a genuine relationship with reality. It's about creating our own version of what reality is, and then bullying everyone into submitting to it and making them feel like freaks or weirdos or oddballs or something wrong with them if they can't adapt to it. So that's like an inversion of the actual state of affairs. Because if we're very good at adapting to a false reality, that's not a good thing for us. It doesn't say anything good about us, really. The ability to not relate to reality cannot be seen. It's not anything that we should aspire to, really. And yet, in our society, we do aspire to it without admitting that we aspire to it. Because we turn everything on its head, because we flip everything over, and we make a virtue of controlling, make a virtue of not being somebody who doesn't know what's going on and is happy not to know what's going on and is happy just to see things happening as it happens by itself. Someone who is happy to be surprised, someone who is happy to change, because when we're surprised, we change. When we relate to reality, we change. It's impossible to have any relationship with reality without that relationship changing us. It's impossible to have a relationship with anything, with anyone, with another person. Relationship always involves in change. So this really does allow us to see what it all comes down to is control is a way of not changing, is kind of what I was going to say. So we are elevating, not changing, which really means identity, fixed identity. So we're identity worshippers. And for being a person that's actually growing and isn't the same the next day or the next day, that they're more like a flowing stream than a fixed, never-changing ego, is not what we want. We don't value that. We don't value change. We don't value letting go. We value holding on.